Hey everybody, today we're going to show you a repair video on how to repair your condenser motor on a Samsung refrigerator. Now I'm going to give you 4 tips on how would you know your condenser fan motor is bad. Now the first tip is your refrigerator cooling? Because in many cases if you open it up and it's got some type of off-level cooling, refrigerator's warmer at the top, colder at the bottom, or your freezer's kind of like the ice cream's kind of melting but everything else is freezing, things of that nature, that can be a sign of a condenser motor going out. All right, tip number 2, everybody, is if you go to your refrigerator, you open it up, and around the seals of the door, you feel any type of excessive heat, almost too hot to touch, you leave your hand on there and it's super hot, like it's almost gonna burn you. That is telling you a lot of times that the condenser coil is very, very hot. If it's really hot, then that means it's not getting airflow. So either the fan's not running or your condenser coils are really dirty. So one of those 2 options, that's another thing that can mean that your condenser fan motor's out. Tip number 3 is noises. So the refrigerator can make a lot of noises, but from behind the refrigerator, there's really 2 noises it really makes more than anything else. That's your compressor running and your condenser fan motor running. So if you hear a noise like a bearing, a high squeal, or an off-putting kind of noise that's just loud and not normal, then pull your refrigerator out, take the back off. If your refrigerator is designed that way, if you have a top mount refrigerator where your compressor's at the top, then pull that off and check in there. But on this model, it's at the bottom. So when you pull off at the bottom, you're gonna be able to locate where that noise is coming from. It's gonna be pretty simply aligned. So if you see that the condenser fan motor is making a noise, then that means the bearings are going out, and most likely that motor will fail within hours or days. Lastly, tip number 4 is if you're not getting like that hot air coming out from underneath the refrigerator. Sometimes you can feel it by your feet or feel it with your hand. You can feel air being blown out from underneath the refrigerator. That's your condenser fan motor extracting heat from the condenser coil and blowing it out. So if you're not feeling any type of heat, then that can also mean that your condenser fan motor has gone out. Hey guys, last tip is if you pull the refrigerator out and you go to the back of it, and let's say the compressor's not running at all and your unit is not cooling at all, but your compressor is extremely hot, then most likely the condenser fan has failed for a while and you'll probably have to replace it to get everything cooled back off. But you can usually check this out by filling the compressor, and if the motor next to it isn't running when everything else is running inside the refrigerator, then that usually means that the condenser motor's gone out. Alright, so now we're going to show you how to replace the condenser fan motor. We're going to use a supply and demand repair kit, which was made a few years ago for this problem. It is half the price of the OEM, so you can save a good amount of money. It's going to cost you about 50 bucks total, and you're going to actually reuse some of the components on the refrigerator. Because the OEM is sold with the bracket and everything, you only get the motor and the fan blade on here. The reason we provide the blade is sometimes when you're taking the blade off of the old one, it'll break, and so this makes it convenient. And you can actually purchase the motor only as well and save even more if you don't need the fan blade. We also sell that at supply and demand. But today we're going to replace both of them just for the convenience factor. Hey everybody, we're back here behind the refrigerator now. I've got the back already taken off, which was simply just some screws. You can use a screwdriver or a drill. Be careful with the drill, as if you can't use it lightly, you could break things like plastic and things of that nature. But if you use just a basic Phillips head or sometimes a 1/4 inch, you can get the back right off. Now down here on this model we have our compressor here. Now this is super hot. If I were to put my hand on here all the way, it would it'd burn me. Like that stung right there. So be careful when you're messing with this, it's not gonna shock you or anything after you've unplugged the refrigerator, but it can burn you because it gets very, very hot. That's how it extracts the heat from the refrigerator. And then here is your condenser fan motor here. So this is what went out. This went out, it got this extremely hot. The compressor got really hot because this didn't run. And in that effort, it also got our coils back here completely hot. And this, when it gets hot, it can't extract the heat, and then therefore your unit starts warming up. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually remove the condenser motor. This is what we're gonna replace, and the housing. It's actually pretty simple to remove. It's got a plug here. We simply unplug this, and you don't have to worry, the plug comes with the new motor. And then this right here, this whole thing comes out. So you just kind of pull on it, and it usually will slide or pop out. But this is your entire condenser motor on this Samsung model. And so it's in a housing right here, and then that's your blade right there. All right, so now guys, we got our kit right here. And what we're gonna do with the kit is we're gonna replace this. You can see the fan motor is the same. It's, or the blade. This blade is exactly like this blade. Now you can reuse this if you don't break it and pull it off. You can have this one as an extra. You know, it's up to what you guys wanna do. It's just easier sometimes to replace it all at once. So here is our motor. You can see it's got our long hookup, so you don't have to worry about that. It'll hook right in when you're done. So now we're gonna replace it. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to remove this fan blade and see if I can. Just be careful. You know, you're messing with plastic. Sometimes it can break and cut you, things of that nature. You can always wear gloves if you're not sure. If you can't get it off, you can break it off, but you don't want to break your frame. That's the one thing you want to be careful with. So we're gonna try to pry it off here. Ooh, that motor's hot. Be careful too, the motor's been trying to run, so it can get hot, and that can burn you as well. So just be careful, move slow, you know, you'll be fine. All right, so you see how hard that was on there. Now we got this off, we could reuse it if we wanted to, but that's an example. I've gotten these off before. If you pull on the blades, these things will crack right off because they're so light. But if you pull from under here, try to get on there, then you can probably manage to save the blade. All right guys, I got a simple small screwdriver here. We're gonna unscrew this inside here. It's gonna drop our motor out of the housing. So once we do that, you can see this is the lip of it. We can then go underneath, turn it, and as you turn it, it should pop right out of there. And then just take it out of the loop and out of here, and then there you go. Now you want to keep this housing. We can clean it up, and then we're going to reuse this housing, and we're going to reuse this plastic motor housing that has gaskets in it. You got to have the gaskets, so make sure that you don't mess this housing up. Onto the motor. So the motor has this housing. We are going to remove the screw here with the Phillips screwdriver. Like I said before, if you use a drill, you may not want to on this part because you're dealing with fragile plastic and you could break it. So now we're gonna open this housing up. And again, you wanna be careful because sometimes the housing can be kind of hot. So that's our housing. Now, what we need are gaskets off of here. These guys right here have to come off of the old motor. You're gonna put them on the new motor. We're gonna use a flathead screwdriver here, and we're going to pry them off just easily. Sometimes they are brittle. Now, this thing does not come with new gaskets. As you can see, this motor is bare. So you wanna use the new ones to go onto there. Now, if you need new gaskets, you can probably find something similar at a hardware store, but the only issue is if you install this in the housing without these gaskets, this thing is gonna rattle around and it won't run correctly. So you've got to have the gaskets on here. All right, so again, the motors can be super hot. You can always work around them, use gloves. We're gonna take our back one off here. Nice and easy. It's another gasket. Anything, there it goes. All right, now we're gonna put this on our back one. So now we've got both our gaskets on here so that we can put this right back into our housing and we'll hook everything back up. Now we're gonna put this back into the housing. So I'm gonna simply put this one, actually, it goes in like this. The way you can tell on the housing, if you get it mixed up, is this lip is what stands up. So the front of the motor, the extension of your probe there is gonna go into it like that. So we're gonna put it in there. And we're gonna have these wires just come through. And I'm gonna just put this, push it up in there, clip it all back on. It's on there. Now we're gonna put our screws back in. And then after that, we've got our motor. Now we're gonna put this guy back into the housing. So we're simply gonna take our housing, we cleaned it up, looks a lot nicer. It goes this way. So, that way, there you go. So now it's back in there. Now all we gotta do is hook our wires back in, put our screw in right here, which we'll go ahead and do that first. So let's go ahead and put our screw in. And again, make sure you proceed with caution here. You don't wanna break the plastic. They make this very fragile sometimes. Now we're gonna reroute our wires over here and through there, so that's done. And now I have the option here to use my old fan blade, cleaned it up, looks nice, or use the new one. So you have options. I'm gonna save one, and what we'll do is we'll take this one, just basically press it down. There it goes. And you got yourself the fan. Now if you push it down, you want to give it a twirl before you install it, because if the blade's hitting anything, you need to pry it back up a little bit. But it should be okay, because the way this blade is built, you can't push it down far enough. But if this inner piece breaks or got brittle and breaks, then just grab your new fan, use it. But if this piece breaks here, your fan will go all the way down to the bottom. It won't work, you'll have to use the new fan. Now, we're gonna put this back in here. And so we're gonna squeeze in here. It's a tight space sometimes. Again, be careful, go slow. Get it in there. All right, once it's in here, there are some, you wanna make sure you clip it in. So there's when you get in, you see how there's ledges right here? You're actually going to lay down in front of those ledges, and then you're gonna slide this thing in. See how I slid that in? Now it's in there. So it slides on the ledges and it hooks in. If this thing's loose and isn't like in there, I mean, it's gonna be a little bit loose because it's plastic, but if it's like gonna fall over, then you didn't put it in right, and you're gonna have to, you know, wiggle it around a little bit more, but you'll get it. It's actually pretty simple. Now we're gonna plug her in here, up here. And voila, you have replaced your condenser fan motor. All right, guys, you can see our fan motor is finally running. It's nice and quiet. Everything should pull back down, operate properly. Within 24 hours, it'll usually regulate and everything will go back to normal. A good idea is to be patient when you first plug it in, because sometimes the computer boards that are built into here, like this one has one here, and the compressors will start first, and then the motor will come on about 5 seconds, sometimes 30 seconds later. So just be patient, give it a chance. Once it comes on, you know, you're gonna obviously see it start, and then you should have good airflow. Last thing we gotta do is put our back on. I had taken it off before just to make the repair a little bit quick. Once we get her on here, again, there's no rush. You wanna make sure you do this. You don't wanna trap any water lines or accidentally pinch anything when you're putting this stuff back together. So sometimes it's a little finicky. Sometimes you have to, it may not go on as smooth, but you want to watch your plugs and your water lines. Make sure you don't pinch any of those. You want to make sure this is clear. Your grills, they need to be clear and open so that you got proper airflow being pulled in and pulled out. Same thing with your coils that we had mentioned earlier back there. You want to make sure those are clean as well. That way you don't have any issues with any type of airflow, and it'll cool your refrigerator down a lot quicker. So we're going to put this together, and after that we're simply going to push it back, make sure our front grill is clear and doesn't have any lint up there, and then you will be set to go. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel for more repairs and testing to do it yourself on all your appliance repairs.